Hello everyone, I'm Daniel. I'm software engineer at Fortress and in the last year software development manager. And yep, I'm going to speak about the front-end architecture using Angular. So yeah, I'm going to speak about the front-end architecture and seeing some strategies, some concepts, tools that we can use in our project when we start scaling up when we have an enterprise project. Using Angular, okay, so I'm going to speak about the specific of Angular, but many of these ideas can apply to if you're working with other JavaScript framework like React or Vue.js. Also, these are not silver bullets, are not things that you can apply in every project. Depends on your project, the size, your team, okay? And I don't know, like the brilliant and super funny introductory in the introduction, the initial talk that did Hadi Hariri, that in a very funny way he mentioned that don't over engineer things, no, don't try to solve complexity with complexity. These ideas is just apply if in case you need it, and it doesn't need to fit any case. So I'm going to go through the agenda. So I'm going to do a very quick introduction about Fortress. I'm going to use it as an example because actually this is these ideas is our experience in our project. I'm going to speak very quickly about some examples of classic architecture and how we've been evolving with that, and some basic concepts about Angular and also the JavaScript in the server side, just in case, well, not everybody is a front-end developer or never had used Angular. And this is the first block, like an introduction, and then we are going to work one pattern, the backend for frontend. So using the server-side JavaScript to create some APIs to use as a proxy between the frontend and the backend of our project. The possibility that we have to use a monorepo, putting all together all our applications, libraries, APIs that we're using, and how we can structure this monorepo based in some ideas of of DDD, domain-driven design. One tool specific for that, a really good tool, NX, to build to build our workspace to work with this monorepo. And just a few comments of what's next. Micro-frontend, that is quite popular right now. So let me introduce Fortress. Fortress is a 4-year company focused on fintech solutions based on blockchain and crypto. And the main product is a platform for crypto asset management for enterprise. So the main clients are companies that has a very big volume of crypto. And the two solutions that the platform brings, one of them is management, so make it easy, the management of these crypto funds, especially when you have a big volume, because the crypto by itself has a certain technical complexity that is difficult for the companies to handle this. And we create a platform that makes simple. They manage these crypto assets in a regular basis. So what we have, what they can find in our software is a kind of hierarchy, so they can create organizations between these organizations, different businesses that can fit their business model, and then within accounts where they can send and receive crypto funds from their clients. And using it also in an operational way, they can already use it with automatic payment processors and having it deposits and payouts continuously. And the other big solution is the self-custody. So I don't know if you have any experience already with the crypto, but if you want to invest some money in crypto, normally what as individuals normally do is go into an exchange and then try to invest, let's say, 100 euros in Bitcoin. That is the most famous. You get some amount in return, but the problem with these exchange companies is that they are not supported by governments nor banks. Okay, so it's quite risky for a company that has a big volume that could be millions of dollars or euros, trusting one of these companies without the control of these funds. There are some devices that you can use it to operate, because in order to operate, in example, in Bitcoin, you need a wallet, and associated to this wallet, you have some keys, public private keys, and then you can operate with them. This controls your crypto funds. The problem for a company that has a high volume is that how many of these devices you should have, like 50. 100, it's not operative. So with our software, they can be their own custodial of these crypto funds, 24 hours and 7 days a week. This is in a very brief way the project that we work on. So let's start reviewing very basic, in a very basic and quick way, the classic solution for an architecture. So we can have it. The whole development team working in a monolith. So the backend and frontend could be front-end or could be full stack developers working in some template engine and rendering the front-end in the server and send it to the browser. Then the evolution was keeping the monolith, staying in it, or still having the monolith in the backend, but then start separating the UI, in the front-end. And then the next evolution, having microservices in the backend, some single page application in the front end, and in between create an API gateway. I'm going to speak later. Apply this pattern to some facade service where you can have it as a single entry point from the front end to the microservices and routing all the requests. So yeah, I'm going to also very quickly speak about very basic concepts of Angular. So it's a JavaScript framework with the pros and the cons. You have a lot of stuff out of the box, but you have to work in a certain way. Sorry. Angular is TypeScript based and object-oriented programming, or kind of, and has reactive programming with RxJS. And here are the concept that I'm going to speak later. An ng module is what you use Angular to group our code. So you can declare components there or provide services, your routing system for your single page application, and start defining guards, directive, etc. Also, the module lazy loading is not something, a pattern from Angular, is for just a generic one where you can, your enterprise big application, single page application, you can start splitting it in parts, and then the user from the beginning to bootstrap the application loads the minimum that you need to start the application, and then when reach these certain parts, loading the rest of the applications. And the concept of library that Angular introduced, that is, okay, I have some part of my application. I can use it as a common solution in several applications, so I extract it or create it from scratch. And then I can have my private NPM registry and put it there, and then start using it as a dependency. So yeah, I'm explaining here because NX, in example, the concept of library, you use it massively. And for the API gateway pattern and the backend for frontend concept, we need to have it the server-side JavaScript, what allows to have these APIs with the JavaScript everywhere paradigm, or if you're using TypeScript, so having this on the front end, in the client side and in the server side. Express, there is a framework on top of Node.js that simplifies the process of having REST APIs. got very popular with the Mint stack, but I don't know if you suffer this, but it still has a lot of missing integrations when you want to integrate different technologies, or you have to create a lot of boilerplate there. So there are, on top of that, framework that is becoming little by little more popular, especially in the Angular ecosystem, that is Nest.js. There's a progressing framework where you can go and integrate little by little different technologies. So I know databases, you can add Postgres or for non-SQL Mongo. You can have it Redis as a as in-memory DB, Prometheus for your metrics. So simplifies a lot the work or saves a lot of work for the developers. And in addition, has been heavily influenced by Angular. So you will have the modules, you have the modules. You have a component in Angular. Here we have controllers because we are creating an API. But basically you can do more or less a one-by-one matching. So it's quite convenient if you have a team of Angular developers because the onboarding is quite quick, the learning curve. And also I want to mention GraphQL as a data query manipulation language. It's an alternative for REST that has several very convenient features, but I want to highlight only one. There is the possibility that in a REST API, you have an endpoint, you do the request, and you get a response. And you have let's say the whole package to the client. Here with GraphQL, you can define in your server side, you can define your query, let's say with 20 fields, but you have the possibility in the client side to define custom-made queries based on the previous one. And if always you respect the schema generated, and sorry. And it's tailor-made for this specific Angular component. So you are adapting somehow what you need for this this part of your application. So let's speak about the backend-for-frontend pattern. There is a variation of the API gateway. I mentioned before, the API gateway is a service that we are going to use it to, first, security, only expose this service to the client, not the entire backend platform. We use it as a single entry point for all our requests from the client to the backend. And we can have a different approach. It's just routing to the specific microservice that can send the request. In other cases, we have to compound the response by routing to the different microservices that we need, and then compound and adapt it to the client-side application, or our single-page application. And also we can separate the concerns. So we can have it the team, backend team, and the backend platform focus on the business logic. Only focus on that, and then we can decouple from the requirements of visualization of our front end. So it's the front end here with the backend-for-frontend pattern. We have even the front end working in the server side and adapting per application we have. And the backend-for-frontend at the end, well, in essence, is going to be an adapter. It is going to be a big mapper of everything that it needs, that is requiring from the backend platform to the client. And the error handling is a good example. Sometimes you have errors from in the backend platform that are meaningless to the. So somehow you have to translate the error to something that the client side can understand. So this is something that the backend-for-frontend can do it. And by definition of the pattern, normally what you do is having a backend-for-frontend per application you have. An example, and going to our platform and using as an example, I mentioned two solutions, management and self-custody. Imagine we have one single-page application per each. So you can have it a backend for frontend, two backend for frontend, one per each client-side application. And in addition, being strict with the definition, you need a backend for frontend also per user experience. So you can have it for web, for mobile, and for desktop, but this increases the number of backend for frontend that we have. This is why I mentioned, I highlighted the feature from GraphQL, because taking advantage of GraphQL, we can tailor-made with these custom queries what it needs each of these user experience and then stay with one backend for frontend per application. Okay, it depends on your project, maybe not, but depends on your project. You can take advantage of this technology to avoid it, because the more backend for frontend, the more maintenance and development. So seeing a little bit the backend for frontend structure, there is a simple layered architecture. So we have at the backend for frontend an API that proxies from the frontend to the backend, and we have this connection with the UA application. Here I put it what we're doing. That is not the silver bullet. Depends on your project, but here using the REST for things like auth, PDF downloading, because you can't with GraphQL, or streams for reports, and then anything else using GraphQL with this super flexibility that we have with this query. As I said, it has another very convenient features, but I highlighted this for the purpose of the talk. So we have the backend microservices, then communicating with the backend for frontend. This could be REST, could be gRPC, and then the three layers, typical three layers. We have the controller and resolvers in the top for the REST API and GraphQL communication, a logic layer in between. That here the main purpose is to mapping what we can map data. So we get data, let's say raw data from the backend microservices, and map it to what exactly it needs for the visualization process purposes in the different components in Angular. But we also can map all the different things, like I imagine we have it event source backend, and we want to map events from RabbitMQ or Kafka to WebSockets for the client, so we can map it here, and so on and so forth. And the last layer, instead of here we don't have a repository layer, we don't have databases, or at least the same purpose as the backend. So what we have here is a data access layer. We have several services that the only purpose is to connect with the backend and do the requests that we need. So we saw the different classic approaches. Let's see how it looks with using backend for frontend in our architecture. So we have this bunch of, these are some examples, bunch of distributed microservices. So we have a microservice for auth, another for, in our business model, account, order, all the two that are quite common, reports and audit in many products, or here one specific blockchain. If we have these distributed microservices architecture, but it's event source, we can have it RabbitMQ or Kafka, as I mentioned, and then working on top of the blockchain. So what we have in the front end, we are going to have these two that I mentioned before, these two single-page applications, and then each respective backend for front end working as a proxy, single point entry point for our requests, and then communicating and resolving all the needs of the front end to the back end. The same way in the back end we have a monolith, and then we turn into distributed microservices. Our backend for front end. And this is something that we experience can start growing and growing and growing. So we can continue the pattern or follow the same pattern and have it behind our backend for frontend, also microservices for specific things and to speak or communicate with a specific microservices in the backend. So with an example with Next.js, it's quite easy to have it create these microservices. So we can have it one specific that is going to be in between the backend for frontend, that is the only exposed, and have it behind that is speaking with Kafka. And then we get the Kafka events as a consumer. We have some topics that can interest to the client side, and start consuming it, and then process it, map it, whatever we need, and create our events for the client with WebSockets. The same for the out service. Imagine we are using JWT, we have our tokens, but we don't want to expose some sensitive data. So what we can do is basically do the same pattern, mapping, and create the JWT for the connection between the backend for frontend and the single page application, or cookies, or whatever choice you want. What else? Here, not necessarily is one by one in the top, it's just examples, but you can have it also use a translation service. So we don't want to hard-code our messages in the application, so we can create a service that gets some, I don't know, can work with a MongoDB, in example, create our dictionaries, and then when the application requests to the backend for frontend and our API, and getting the dictionaries needed, because we are lazy loading. Whenever we load another chunk of our application, we get the next dictionary for this one. And the good thing is you can have it kind of hot reload, and having the content writer or translator, people that is working on the translations, working on that from out the software life cycle. Or the PDF service. Imagine we have to get some raw data from the backend and generate PDF for that. We can have it another microservices specific for that. So this is more or less the idea. This is backend for frontend. The next concept will be the monorepo. So traditionally we're working with multiple repository, one repository, Git repository for each application, each library, each API service that we're working on. So this is another approach, another alternative to have it all our different application libraries and services put it all together in one monorepo. Of course, there are some challenges that we have to handle, but it has some benefits, or could have some benefits for your project. And one of them is that it's more difficult to break the adjacent functionality. So that means that we have it some different part areas of our applications, and even more than one application together, with each corresponding backend from frontend, everything together in the monorepo. So if I'm doing changes for one specific, because I have it in the monorepo as in my local machine, I can run all the automated testing suite at once and check that I'm not breaking other adjacent parts of the project. Also, it's quite easy that with this monorepo that the team share some standards, some technologies. So all the team, the front-end team, is going to work in 13 technologies like Angular and maintain it in the same version. Otherwise, if you have multi-repo, it's so easy to the progress the repos that you frequently work on it, and start having all the versions in the repository, and you have to do an effort. Here, because it's sharing all of these dependencies, you have it everything aligned across. Or if you are using third-party library for specific things, it's the same thing. You can align the whole team to use this library for this specific purpose. I don't know, managing dates. In example, you have a library, you create your wrapper, and you can use it across the team. You created these also internal libraries that you're creating, instead of having to convert it into a publishable, having a private NPM repository, having to publish, versioning. You add it as a dependency in each multi-repo and start having misalignments or not testing everything properly because you test the part that you are interested, and later on discover that you have problems with all the parts of the project. Here is an advantage for that. And yeah, it's more or less the same. Share the code and dependency between the APIs. An example, in our project, when we need to update a major version of Angular or Nest.js, now with the Monorepo is much easier because you align all the different parts of the project at once. And yeah, painless application-wide refactoring. You want to do a refactoring, you change for the entire team some approach, you can do it like this, and in the same, or doing it at once, sorry. So NX is a tool that, created by the Narwhal company. That was founded by some ex-Angular team members. That allow us to create monorepos, create a workspace for us, and with a lot of boilerplate, saves a lot of boilerplate to the developer, integrates automatically some testing tools like Jest for unit test or Cypress for end-to-end, and you have it out of the box, and have three main features that help us to structure our monorepo with the different strategies that we choose. So we choose a strategy and we can structure according to that, and brings really nice tools for doing that. So the three main pillars, the three main features is, the first one is that in our application of Angular and also Nest, that is quite similar, we are going to decompose the entire application by moving all the code out of the app application. Normally we have the app folder, we have an app module, an app component that allows us to bootstrap our application. This is going to stay there, but apart from that, all our code, we are going to decompose it in libraries. This is why I explained in the beginning the concept of library, and we are going to decompose this in library according with our feature entities, domains that we want to work with, and then start structuring. That is, and you will see that it's quite easy to structure it. Also, we can define boundaries. This is really good to trying to have a low coupling in our project, in our code. So what we can define by using a system of tags and implicit dependencies, we are going to define, okay, in this library, for this part of the code is going to be accessible only from these other libraries or these other parts of these other libraries. So we can set that boundaries, avoid circular references, and also heavy coupling of our code. So with this tool, we can avoid that. And also another problem that we have, that is, okay, we have a monorepo, we have all the applications, APIs. What happens if I do a change and push that changes in the CI? It's going to have to build, run all our testing suites and create the artifacts and deploy everything. I just changed one application. So no, the NX provides some scripts to calculate what has been affected by these changes. And then in the CI is going to only build, test, create artifacts and deploy in your environments only what has been affected. Okay, and these calculations could be oriented to what applications has been in the wide sense, what application has been affected, or even you can go more granular and what libraries has been affected. And let's create a graph for you where you can see the structuring of your monorepo, and then calculate and do these calculations for you. Here, how much time? We're going good? How much? 15 minutes. Okay, so I'm going to stop the presentation for a second and show you, if I can. How is the structure of our workspace? Let me check if I can escape because sorry on that. I can exit the. Okay, anyway, I'm going to continue here. I was about to show you in WebStorm empty project, and maybe I can disconnect it because I don't know why my bar is not. It's not working now. What happened now? Okay. Yeah. How it looks. Okay. So here you can see the structure. This is a fresh NX workspace. I created the project with one Angular application and with one Nest application. My API for the Nest.js, that will work as a backend for frontend, and my app. So here we can see that in my app I have the feature folder, and here's a library user. We're going to create some boilerplate for us, and then we have the source code with the library. And here we started having our module, our first service here. Okay. So in our, I opened 3 key files in our workspace for NX. So we have the Angular JSON, we have the config for the same way we have the config for an application. We have the libraries, and nothing new is following the Angular pattern. So we have the definition for the application and the config for our applications and libraries. And in order to be flexible to move according to our strategy, it doesn't matter what it is, be able to move quickly these libraries and have a high level of maintainability and scalability of our application. The project NX4U creates some aliases for the different libraries and applications with the relative path of this application or library. So it's that simple that you move whatever you need. You here in the tsconfig JSON adjust the relative path, and because for the importation you're using the alias, always using the alias. It's a matter just to here centralize, update the relative path, move whatever you want. And with the NX.json file here, there are metadata for the project, for your workspace. And one important thing is the tags. As I said, with this system of tags, you can start defining categories for your different applications, libraries, and then start defining the boundaries of your different part of the application. So this is what is this slide about. Okay. So I'm going to go very quickly. This is our first proposal of the structuring, how we can structure our libraries in our NX monorepo. This is from 2018, the original one from NX. So we have an application. We create an application folder for our within the libraries folder. We create one folder per application, application 1, application 2, Doesn't matter, it could be a single page application or a API, no, a backend for frontend. We have a shared P2P libraries that we want to share between the applications, so we don't need external libraries in that as a dependency. We can define it and set it here. And within our application, we are going to have different categories for our libraries. We can have features when we have components, smart components with some logic. UI for components that are dumb is only visualization purpose. Utility for some classes that we want to use it as a helper, have some logic there. Data access, as I mentioned, some services that can access the backend for frontend, or in the case of the backend for frontend to the backend. And also common between when we want to share some libraries, some code within the same application, but not between applications, so we can control more or less what we have. But this approach is not, well, you can see that it's quite simple, and sometimes if your projects start becoming more complex, can be not enough, and you're gonna start coupling your code more and more and more. So here, another strategy is applying ideas from DDD. Very quickly, in DDD, we want to focus on domain, business domain, or core domains. So we split the project in these areas. In order to improve our maintainability, scalability, we need some isolation in order to have a low coupling, isolate our domain, and start having small teams of experts collaborating within this domain. So how it looks on structuring in NX of a monorepo with that. And this is a proposal by one of the references in Angular architecturing. His name is Manfred Steyer, responsible of Angular architects. So the idea is to have it, define your different domains, having a folder per each domain. Again, have it a shared folder, and then having different layers where we are going to work with. And then we have a feature for smart components. We are going to have an API that is going with our boundaries. We can define this only entry point for this domain, for the libraries of this domain. So we're going to have this API and expose it only what we want from there. Again, another layer of UI component, DAM components. And then we have the domain where we're going to have the facade, some services that act as a facade for the upper layers, the feature, API, and UI. Then we're going to have in between the domain with a little business logic that we need in the front end or the model's definition. And at the very lower level, we have the data access, our infrastructure. There is going to be the services that connects with the backend microservices, and also a last layer of utilities. So we have here defined classes for using as a helper. Okay, so this is more or less the structure proposed. So in other domains, we are going to have the same structuring. Not necessary if we don't have UI DAM components in that other domain, we don't need it. But the idea is that the feature, the components that are smart component that has some logic can interconnect with other domains through the API. So we can more or less control the coupling that we have. Okay, and what's next? These are two ideas. Micro frontends is one of them that has been for a while there already, and is quite hot topic in the front end. We didn't apply an example. This is a good example that we don't need it, so we don't apply it. So basically, the idea is, if you remember what I mentioned for lazy loading, that is having different parts that you only loaded when this chunk of the application when the user needed. This is a kind of same idea. Here you can have it different frameworks, and it doesn't need to load it from your domain. It can be several different domains loaded there. Then you can have a host part of the application, the main part of the application, sharing the dependencies, through the different micro frontend, have minimum connection. So for teams that are more isolated, it could be a good idea. You're kind of more isolated with a separated delivery process and things like that. And the other thing that is in common is the doing an Angular architecture without modules. That is, well, it's not a big breaking concept. It's just that finally Angular is going to take the step, apparently in the next version, Angular 14, to be able to, we as a developer, we are going to be able to create components without the need of a module. Because right now, it doesn't matter if you need just one component in one library, you have to create the library, you have to create the module, declare your component in the module, a lot of things just for a simple component. So something that has been way expected like, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, finally is in common. So you can have it some more complex structure with your module grouping this code, but also you can have it as standalone components that doesn't require much. Actually, it's going to be possible to have it, the whole structuring of your application without modules. It's going to be optional, but in order to don't be a breaking change, it's going to be backward compatible, and then you can mix the different options. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Daniel. Is there any questions?
Hola, buenas. Lo primero, enhorabuena por la charla. Me gustó mucho y tenía un poco una duda cuando has comentado el tema de que aplicáis ahí un poco arquitectura de Domain Driven Design y demás. Quería un poco a ver si puedes aclarar si lo hacéis más en el lado frontend ahí en Angular o del lado backend, porque yo la he aplicado en el lado backend, pero en la parte del frontend siempre me genera más dudas.
Vale. I will answer in English if you don't mind. So the question is this structuring using the ideas of DDD, if we do it only in Angular or doing in both client side and server side, and we do it in both. We can apply. Actually, it's incredible similar. It's quite similar. If you open a project from Angular and Nest.js, at the beginning, as a developer, sometimes it's quite confusing. You don't know if you're seeing Angular or Nest. It's quite similar. So yeah, you can apply the same and take advantage. If you have a strategy, you like it, it applies to your team and your project, you can use it in both. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Hi. Does NX support or handle monorepos with several languages? For example, if I have the backend in PHP and the frontend and JavaScript, and this can introduce more complexity on the build process and handle the order to build that component.
So
they have dependency big with them.
Working with Angular, Nest.js as a backend for frontend, and then PHP. Yeah, could be an option perfectly. Yeah. The only thing is you're going to have, depending on the approach, you're going to have, if you're using a PHP framework like Symfony or Laravel, you're going to have some overlap within Nest.js. Actually, in the past, I've been working with Symfony and Laravel, and there are quite similar stuff in between the two frameworks. So yeah, depends a lot on your project. Feasible, yeah, it's doable. You can do it and use it as a. You want it. Depends a lot on your project, because you are going to have overlapping of these from these two frameworks if it's the case.
Great, thank you. Any other question? In Spanish or in English, doesn't matter? No? Then a big applause for Daniel, please.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.